If you remember the escutcheon that you were cutting for your toilet bowl caps, well, here's what you're going to do next with this. Measure 7/16 up from the cut bottom here that you made and make a line all the way around. Once you have that, take your Dremel cutoff tool and cut just above the line and deburr both edges of your escutcheon. And once again, here's our cut escutcheon. It's just a rough cut right now, but what we have to do is we have to make these edges here sit flush in our PVC ring assembly. So you can see I just placed it on here temporarily, and all this overlap that we have here in our escutcheon, we have to sand it down now so that the edges of here sit flush right here on our PVC ring. And here's what our escutcheon is finally going to look like once it is sanded and trimmed. Now when I place it here on my PVC ring assembly, again just before, like my handle section, the edges here they meet up with the corners here with my PVC ring assembly, and this is again what you want for a look. Now if you give me MIDI here, I'm going to temporarily assemble my pommel section. And here's my pommel right now. It is temporarily assembled just to show you what it's going to start looking like. On Obi Wan's lightsaber, his pommel section has 6 3/8" cubes. So, as you guessed it, we're going to have to make those cubes. So, take your 3/8 square stock here, and what you're going to do is you're going to sand down one of the ends here. So go to your disc sander and sand down one of these edges. This will be your finished end. Once you have that area nice and flat, take a marker and a ruler and measure 7/16" down from your finished end and make a mark there. And at that mark, you are going to cut it with your Dremel tool. Now once you have cut it with your Dremel tool, go back to your disc sander and sand down that area once again on your square bar. So therefore you will always have a finished end. And then go back again, make another 7/16" mark as shown, and then cut again with your Dremel tool. Repeat that until you have 6 squares. Also note, while you are cutting your 3/8" cubes, your square bar and your cubes will become very hot. In the event if you have to move the cubes over or if they fall off the table, picking them up simply with your hands with your gloves on, the heat will burn right through the glove and then eventually burn your hand. So I advise you to use a pair of pliers if you have to move them or pick them up off the floor. And here we have our 6 cubes here which have been cut out. Now each of these cubes here is just about 7/16" long, if not maybe just a little shorter, but that's fine because we still have to sand these down yet to 3/8". Now after I let my cubes cool down, on the finished edges here I marked the letter F on the finished edge because I want these edges here facing away from my pommel section once I start assembling my lightsaber. Now if you also notice here that on my 3/8 key stock here, the finish here is rather dull and mine does feel kind of just a little bit rough. So if you notice when I start flipping these over that I did polish up these edges here a bit all the way around. And I want to show you the difference here between once you polish your cubes and the ones that are not polished here. Now this cube here was cut off my 3/8 bar here, and as you can see that it does have rather of a dull finish here, and just by touching it, it does feel slightly rough. Now this is the one here that is just polished all the way around here on the sides, and the reason why you want a nice polished finish is because that once you start painting these, it will just look better. Now this is just for demonstration purposes only. I'm not wearing any gloves, but I highly advise to wear gloves because these cubes will get hot once you sand them. Take your cubes and place the unfinished side up against your disc sander. Just give it a little pressure and keep it on there for about a second or two. This way you get rid of any other rough surfaces on your cubes for a nice clean finish. To make our cubes 3/8 long, take the area opposite of your finished end on your cube and place it up against your disc sander. Sand down this area and check your measurements periodically. Also remember, wear gloves and use a pair of pliers while sanding. These cubes will become very hot. If you'd like to add some more detail for your pommel section, the cubes you have just finished will need to have a 1/8" hole drilled right through the center of them. And here's one of my cubes as shown here, and this is the finished section. And on one of the sides adjacent to the finished section, you'll have to make an X. Right at the center of the X, drill right through the center there with a 1/8 inch drill bit. Now if you're good with a cordless or power drill, you know it's great, but I was lucky to go to a yard sale and find a drill press, so here I can make my holes perfectly straight all the way through my cubes. Now that our cubes are cut and sanded to 3/8 of an inch and the holes already drilled out, the area here opposite of your finished end is your cut end. Take your Dremel tool with your sanding drum and shave down this area. You want this area to be contoured to your PVC rings. With the majority of the parts already made for our lightsaber, we can now start assembling it. Take your handle here and remove the escutcheons and the bottom body ring. If your epoxy has already separated from your escutcheon with the recessed section, it's okay, we're going to glue that together as well. Take your body tube and sand it down with 320 grit sandpaper. Sand down the bottom body ring with 320 grit sandpaper as well, and sand the inside too with 320 grit sandpaper. Take your bottom escutcheon without the recessed section and sand that down with 320 grit sandpaper as well. Take your escutcheon with the dip section, sand the inside of your escutcheon and the top side of the epoxy filler with 320 grit sandpaper. On your bottom body ring, measure 1/2 inch up from one side and make a mark. Then take your drill with the number 6 self-tapping screw and drill the screw right through the mark you just made. Once the screw is penetrated through the body, remove the screw. Next, wash your hands with soap and water to remove any aluminum dust and shavings from your fingers. You want to have clean hands when you wipe down your saber with a paper towel and paint thinner. This will ensure a clean surface on your saber. Be sure to get down all the areas that you have sanded on your saber body and your escutcheons and your epoxy filler. Go back to your bottom body tube and take your ruler and measure 1/2 inch to the center of the hole you have just made for your screw. The other side will be slightly longer. The area where it measures 1/2 inch, mark an F on this section to show that this will go to the forward end of the saber. Next, mix up a batch of perma-epoxy. This is the thick epoxy that you want to use. Take your bottom escutcheon ring and place it against your bottom body tube. Keep it close together and take your epoxy and place it on the inside of your bottom body ring up against your escutcheon. These two pieces you want to join together. Also take some perma-epoxy and place it on your epoxy filler and epoxy the filler onto your recessed cutout escutcheon. Once all of your epoxy has cured, trial fit your bottom body ring with your escutcheon onto the bottom of your handle and trial fit your escutcheon with the dip section on the top here. Now for here I'm having a little trouble trying to put this on because some of the epoxy has gone into the insides of my forms here, but it's okay. In case if you can't get them on here, what you're going to do is take your Dremel tool with your sanding drum and just lightly sand the inside of your escutcheon with your bottom body ring and on your escutcheon with the dip section. What you want to do is just take away the excess epoxy so that these items fit snug onto your handle.